Morning. You ready for this morning? What do you think of my attire? I'm all ready. This is Debbie approved attire. Last week Derek had the awkward situation of being able to see Debbie and I in conversation because my attire didn't quite fit her guidelines, and instead of saying, "I don't like what you're wearing," she said, "I think it's time to get you new clothes." So I felt like a little, that's what my mom used to say when I was 10 years old. So my name is Darren Davies, one of the elders here, and it's a privilege to talk to you today. So let's pray. So anyone know what is significant about September 22nd this year? 3 weeks from now, the first day of fall. Summer's over, fall begins. It felt like fall a couple weeks ago. Then we had the rain, we had the cold, it was crazy, it was windy. How many of you, fall is your favorite time of year? Football, golden leaves, hunting, soup, and the dreaded of all things, pumpkin, everything. I fail to get the pumpkin craze unless it's pie, where the ratio of pie to whipped cream is like 10 to 1, 10 being the whipped cream and 1 being the pie. Recently, well, last year, one of our kids moved to Spokane, and he was telling Debbie it's so nice to have 4 seasons. And Anthony has lived his whole entire life in Oregon. And so I took offense to that statement. I mean, we have 4 seasons, right? How many say that we have 4 distinct seasons in the Willamette Valley? They might just be really short, but we have 4 seasons. Remember a month or so ago, when it got really hot for a week or so? Well, that was your summer. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember last year we had snow for like 3 days? Well, I hope you got to make a snowman, because that was your winter. The rest of the year is either fall or spring. You just have to look outside and look at your calendar. They'll tell you if it's spring or fall. The one thing they say about living in this area is that if you don't like it today, give it a day, because it's going to change. Some of you try to extend your summer by going to trips where it's warm and there's only one season, like San Diego. Some of you try and avoid the season. How is that working out? We here are left cold, jealous when you come back and your skin is tan in January and we are drinking some sort of spiced lattes. It doesn't quite seem normal. There should be suffering in January. Well, our life has seasons as well. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And sometimes in the midst of the season, it feels pretty lousy. And you feel a little bit like this. Play the clip. And the clip doesn't play. It's like, the clip was from one of my favorite movies, Groundhog Day. And the reporter Phil predicts the weather and says it's going to be cold and long and it's going to last you forever. Does the current season you are in feel like this? If you've had a season have you had a season like this in your past? When the season of life feels like this, we try everything possible to get through the season. We try and escape. We try to get past it onto the next. How's that working out for you? God created seasons. The Bible references seasons in 30 books of the Bible with over 55 references. So God is a season. God is a God of seasons. He knows seasons, and He's here for us in this season of your life. In the very first book of the Bible, in Genesis, it says, "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." When I was asked to speak today, like always, Derek said, speak on what's on your heart. What is God teaching you? Well, isn't that a dangerous thing to say? What I share with you today, I need to listen to, because this message isn't so much for you as it is for me. I appreciate these opportunities to share with you when I do, because when I do, I am forced to articulate what God is teaching me, how He is molding me, and how my own failings have tripped me up. I need more than ever to hear this message today. So today, if you didn't guess, what I'm working on is seasons of life and where I'm at. I have in my mind what my seasons of life are going to look like. Do you do this, or am I the only one? As an adult, we have the seasons of raising our kids. Diapers, then school days, then taxi service and sports, then trips to the youth group, then curfew and dating, then weddings, then being grandparents, and then retirement. We all think that we know what the next season is going to look like. And then when we get there, often it's so much different than what we had envisioned. Sometimes we want to go back to the last season, relive it because it was too short. It went too quick, it was over, and so now you are where you are, and it isn't what it was supposed to be like. Sometimes the current season isn't what you thought it would be because life circumstances have taken a dramatic turn. A few weeks ago, one of our kids sent me this meme that asked this question: why is happiness so elusive? Because we look for it in the future instead of the present. How is that working out for you? Because it hasn't worked out so well for me. I've often struggled with being present in the moment, finding joy in the season I'm in and the circumstances I'm in. Like the winter months when you long for the short days of daylight to become the long days of summer. When sunshine greets you at 6 in the morning and it's still light past 9. What it really comes down to is this: what I really want is what I want. I have in my mind that this is what I'm going to do in the next season of my life. I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that, and this is going to happen, and it will be all great. And then suddenly it isn't, and I find myself in a place where I wasn't planning to be. In a current season where I'm struggling to find joy, happiness, and I don't know the exact words, but there's a sense of loss of what my dreams were and where reality is. I find myself suffering and becoming me-focused, eyes on myself instead of the world around me, and looking forward to that next season because it's going to be better. See, we believe we can escape our current season of pain. Like running south for the winter, we believe we can somehow run to a different season. If nothing else in our mind, and we plan for the day, if nothing else in our mind, and we plan for the day when it is different. Okay, something's not right there. The Bible's clear, we will suffer. In John 16 at the end, Jesus says, in this world, you will have trouble. The message puts it this way: you will continue to experience difficulties. If we aren't suffering, we know someone who is. And if we aren't, just wait, we will. Isn't this a cheerful message for today? Jesus tells us that we aren't surprised, that we shouldn't be surprised. We should be taken aback. Why does he tell us this? Because when things happen, we are surprised. When things happen, we don't stop and say, well, I could have predicted that would happen to me. We want a predictable life. Unfortunately, we don't get to see it that way. God's plan for our lives. In Deuteronomy, it says, the secret things belong to the Lord. Why don't we know these things? Because they are a secret. We can trust in God, even though we don't know all things. Several places we find that God reveals hidden things, but that is in his timing, not ours, and isn't for us to try to figure it out. It's sort of a pastime of mine to try and figure things out, to try and figure a way to predict the future, to plan and make choices to alter the future events. You know what that's called? It's called control. And I have found that when I am not in control, I want it so bad. In times of trouble and difficulties, we often don't see them for what they really are. It is spiritual warfare. Well, that seems a bit heavy, though. How can my troubles, my suffering, my difficulties be considered spiritual warfare? After all, it was just my car running out of gas. Not a big deal. I just lost my job. I can get another one. I was diagnosed with cancer. I lost my spouse. That's just life. That can't be spiritual warfare, can it? But you go ahead and make the list. Maybe it was just losing the Benton County Library Glass Project. Well, that was pretty specific. Where I get in trouble, and where I think many of us get in trouble, is when we begin to doubt God. So we are in the midst of trouble. We do all the things we often do. We question God. We try to figure out how that is good in our lives. We search God, and then we conclude that, well, God is not being faithful. That He has broken His promise for me in my life. When I start to doubt, I begin ever so slightly to lose trust. When you lose trust, you lose faith.
Did you skip a page?
Did I?
Where's the line in spiritual warfare when it's just an inconvenience? You skipped the one.
Oh.
Sorry.
You're right.
I mean.
Where's the line of when it is spiritual warfare
and
it was just an inconvenience? Something that didn't go our way. A wrong turn maybe. When does it become spiritual warfare? When you're going through trouble, no matter what it is, we are forced with a choice. We are tested. Suffering, trials, troubles, difficulties, even temptation. These winter seasons will always either strengthen our faith in God or weaken our faith. What do we do when we have with our trouble? Do we trust in God or do we question God? Now wait, so one path is right, one path is wrong? No, both are okay. Just hear me out on this. There's nothing wrong with questioning God. There's nothing wrong with searching out God's will and His meaning and purpose for our life. Looking at the wonderment of all, who He is and how He is molding us to fit into His plan. So in times of difficulty, it's okay to question God. This is called living out our life in faith. It is okay to wonder and question, how in the midst of this, how can this be part of your plan for my life? But when I get in trouble, and where I think many of us get in trouble, is when we begin to doubt God. So we are in the midst of trouble. We do all the things we often do. We question God, try to figure out how this is good in my life. We search God, and then we conclude that God is not being faithful, and that He has broken His promises for me in my life. And when I start to doubt, I begin ever so slightly to lose trust. And when you lose trust, you lose faith. And when you lose faith, all of a sudden the God who you used to rely on and depend on you is no longer going to be the answer in your time of trials. And I'm sure you can relate to this. You're having something going on in your life. Pick it. Maybe you're there right now. And so you reach out to a friend, spouse, maybe a pastor or a counselor for advice, for help, maybe for comfort. This is going to be someone you trust, I would think. But what if you reach out to that person and they don't give you a straight answer? Or they blow you off? Or they don't seem to be present? What happens the next time? Are you going to go to that person again? Why would you? Do we think that for some reason it would be different with our relationship with God in times of trouble? If you feel that God has let you down in the past, if you feel like He stopped caring for you, why would you turn to Him in the future? I find this struggle often in my life. In times of trouble, I have in frustration, in anger, seldom lies of Satan by saying God is uncaring, He's unloving, He's absent in my life. I do this because what is happening just doesn't seem fair or right. What have I done? I have turned my understanding of who God is and have twisted it into my own whacked out theology. My theology goes something along the lines of, well, if God loves me, then this is what is supposed to occur. Or I've done all the right things and this happened? Well, God isn't loving. That is whacked out theology. It is a messed up view of God. So how is this cycle fixed? First off, I have to stop listening to the voice that is telling me who God is, because it is not going to be right. I need to instead read, meditate, and hear who God says He is. Keep what He tells us, because it's not hidden. We don't have to rewrite the script because the script is already there. If you read the Psalms, in the Psalms, King David goes over and over again about who God is. Yes, the Psalms are worship. Yes, worshiping and praising God is pleasing to him. But it's also doing something for David, as he is reminded over and over again of who God is. You don't think David had trials? You don't think he had times where he questioned God? Because we get to read it. The Psalms are full of his questions. Psalms 22 says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? From the words of my groaning, oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. The Message says it like this: God, my God, why did you dump me miles from nowhere? Doubled up with pain, I call to God all the day. No answer, nothing. I keep at all night, tossing and turning. And then this is where I often stop. I take David's words or something like it. I'm not a poet. And I turn it and I twist it in my mind and I pass judgment on God and what his best is for me. I haven't stopped believing in God. I have stopped trusting him and have begun to believe the lie that he can no longer rescue me. So we say crazy things to ourselves like this: why should I pray if it does no good? Remember the last time, God, and you left me? Why keep going to church or my small group if nothing ever changes? And then ultimately, why trust God when I can do it on my own? Thankfully for David, he didn't stop there. In the same passage, he continues in the next verse and reminds himself, yet you are holy. Enthroned on the praises of Israel, in you our fathers trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. David, in the midst of trial and tribulation and temptation, reminded himself of who God is. God, you are holy. He then reminds himself of what God did. You delivered them. You rescued them. You are trustworthy. David questioned God. And then he turned it back to who God is. David knows that this is who I can trust. This is who will deliver me from my troubles. It is so difficult to do this in the midst of our problems. It is difficult to stop and focus our minds on who God is, who he was and who he will be. So what season are you in? Is your current season not matching up to what you expect it to be? Are you looking for joy in the next season or after this season's over? Have you been surprised by difficulty recently? Maybe it's not recent. Maybe the trouble happened long ago, but it has affected you your entire life. Have you listened to the lies and created your own theology? Remind yourself of who God is. Read about his infinite love and mercy. The Psalms are great for this. Read about his compassion, his grace, his goodness, his wisdom, his power, and his mysteries. We are in a world of suffering. We are in a world of surprises, of trials, and tribulations, and troubles. Are you moving towards the God of all those great things, or are we pushing him out? Early on, I read to you what Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulation. I didn't finish that verse out, but I do now. Jesus followed that by saying, after that, but take heart, I have overcome the world. God knows you, he loves you, he rescues us from ourselves, no matter the season you are in. Thanks. Okay.
I love it.
Think it works?
I love it. It's great.